Welcome to Learning Target 3E, which is dividing radicals. First, when we're solving or simplifying the problem, the reason why we need to simplify the problem is because there's a square root in the denominator. You cannot have a radical, or a root, we call them, in the denominator. So in order to get rid of that, you first have to look to see in the denominator, is the denominator a monomial or a binomial? In this case, monomial means one term. There's only one term here. If in the numerator here, there's a binomial, but we don't care about the numerator. It's all about the denominators. This is a monomial. So monomial. And to get the denominator without a radical, what you need to do with a monomial is multiply the numerator and denominator by that same radical. This is a square root, so I need to multiply two of them together. If it was a cube root, I would have to multiply by one more, because it would be 1 square root of 8, or 1, 2, and 3 denominators. But it's a square root, so we just need to multiply two of them together in the denominator. So looking at what we need to do here, binomial in the numerator. So it's like there's parentheses here. This square root of 8x needs to get distributed to both terms. So this 2 is outside of a radical. So we just do 2 square root of 8x. And then square root of 8x times 2 square root of 2x. So there's a plus in between. Plus from the addition. And then we have, so there's a 1 on the outside here. 1 times 2 is 2. And square root of 2x times the square root of 8x is the square root of 16x. X times x is x squared. In the denominator, so now I multiply that whole numerator out. In the denominator, we just have a monomial times a monomial. So it's the square root of 8x times the square root of 8x is the square root of 64x squared. Ran out of room here, so let's bring this down. We have next step, after you multiply it all out, now we have to take each term. We have 3 different terms here. Take each term and see if you can simplify them. So we have 2 square root of 8x. Can I simplify that term? So looking at just this first term, can I simplify that? Yeah, the square root of 8. I can break that down into 4 and 2 and 2 and 2. And it's the square root. So we're looking at pairs. And so we have a pair of 2's. So that'll come out. There's already 2 on the outside, so it's 2 on the outside times another pair, so times 2 more. And then square root, and we have a 2 left over. And we only have an x, so you can't, there's only one x, so you can't make a pair out of that. Looking at the next term, can I simplify this term? So it's 2 on the outside, square root of 16. Square root of 16 is 4. Square root of x squared is x. Alright, that's it. There's no more square roots, so it's gone. Now the denominator. Look at the denominator. Here's our last term that we have to simplify. So square root of 64 is 8. Square root of x squared is x. Alright, let's look to simplify this down a little bit more. We have 4 square root of 2x plus 8x over 8x. And this would be the final problem, final answer, but we do have something going on here. Each one of the terms you can actually simplify. Look at the coefficients, 4, 8, and 8. All are divisible by the same number. And they're all divisible by 4, so you can simplify. 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. So the actual final answer here, so we have 1 times the square root of 2x is square root of 2x. plus 2x. Those are not like terms. The square root of 2x and 2x are totally different. And that's over 2x. And that's your final answer. Can't simplify anymore. You can't cross out the 2x's because there's addition here. You'd have to simplify both terms with 2x. You can't. So this is your final answer. Alright, moving on. Next example. Yeah, it's actually a cube root now. So now I have to look at multiplying by the denominator. It's just the radical. So it's this cube root of 4x multiplied by one more cube root of 4x. So there's 3 cube roots of 4x in the denominator. Because it's a cube root, you're going to multiply by 3 of them. Or 3 together total. And what that does is that will get rid of the cube root. Alright, let's multiply this out. So again, in the numerator, we got to distribute. Well, let's make this easier. So what I'm going to do to make this easier, let's just multiply this numerator out, just this part here. If you just multiply that part, 4 times 4 is 16, and x times x is x squared. So this is the cube root of 16x squared. And what I'm going to do is take that and multiply by each term. So 2 times the cube root of 16x squared is 2 cube root of 16x squared. Plus, we take the cube root of 16x squared times the cube root of 4x. And so that's the cube root of 64x to the third. And notice I'm not simplifying anything. I'm just multiplying together in this step. That's all I'm going to do. We have 5 as the coefficient, and then 4x times 4x times 4x is 64x to the third. Simplifying this down, and I'll look at each term just like we did in the last one. Last problem. 16 gets split up into, if you break this down with the trees, it'll be 2 from the outside here, the coefficient, times another 2, and there'll be a 2 left over. And cube root of 64, so that's the first term. Cube root of 64 is 4. So if you broke it down with the trees, it'd be 4. And the cube root of x to the third is x. In the denominator, you have 5 as the coefficient. Oh, it's still there. And cube root of 64 is 4. Cube root of x to the third is x. Simplify this down a little bit. First term is 4 cube root of 2x squared plus 4x all over 20x. Now look at the coefficients of each term. There are 3 terms we're looking at. So the coefficient here is 4. Coefficient on this second term is 4, and then it's 20. You have 4, 4, and 20 are all divisible by the same number, all divisible by 4, so divide them by 4, you get 1. 4, you get 1, and 20, you get 5. So my final answer is cube root of 2x squared plus x over 5x. And that's my final answer there. Last example. I know this is a longer one, but last example. You have binomial in the denominator, so now we got to do something a little different. With a binomial, you multiply by the conjugate, it's called. And all you need to do is switch the sign in the middle. 3 minus 4 square root of n. So you can't just multiply by the whole denominator. You got to multiply by the whole denominator and switch the sign. When you multiply in the denominator, you got to multiply in the numerator because this is equivalent to 1. So you're not changing the value of the expression. You're just manipulating it so it doesn't have a square root in the denominator, or radical in the denominator. So we do 2 times 3, 6, minus 2 times 4n, or 4 square root of n is 8 square root of n, over, and then in the denominator, you got to do, FOIL it out, double distribution. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times negative 4 square root of n is negative 12 square root of n. 4n now times 3, 4 square root of n times 3 is positive 12 square root of n. And 4 square root of n times a negative 4 square root of n is negative 16 square root of n squared. Alright, now just like the last problems, we just got to simplify every term that we can. In the numerator, there's nothing to simplify. 6 can't simplify any further. 8 square root of n, you cannot simplify any further. In the denominator, we have a negative 12 square root of n and a positive 12 square root of n. Those should always cancel out when we're doing this. And then the last term, n square root of n squared is n. So we have 9 minus 16n. Now you look at, we have 4 different terms. We have 6, we have 8 square root of n, we have 9, and 16n. All 4 of those do have something in common. We have 2 and 3, and 6, 2 and 4 and 8, 3. Nope, there's nothing in common. This is your final answer. Nothing else you can simplify. That's it. Okay, thank you for listening.